Glad to see all of you. We have a real treat today. Our speaker is James, and we are so glad to have him with us. Okay. I want to remind you all that in April we will meet here on the 6th instead of the 2nd, because the 2nd Saturday is during the Arts Festival, and so we want you to be able to participate with us as much as you want to participate at the Arts Festival. You can bring your books, put up posters, and sit in our booth and push Caprock writers and your own writing as well. So we want anybody that wants to be part of that, you are so welcome. And we'll have a sign-up sheet probably pretty soon for us to kind of fill in on those spaces. So there's an opportunity for us all there. You want to make plans for, before we go any further, Aubrey, I want to thank you publicly for bringing the goodies. Everybody give Aubrey a little round of applause. We don't have a hospitality chairman, and so the board has decided that rather than try to inflict this title on somebody, we're all taking turns. So Aubrey volunteered, and so bless your heart, Aubrey. We're going to all go to lunch afterwards at Oberon's if you like Mexican food, or even if you don't, they have great food. And so if you are thinking about going to lunch, we'd like a show of hands. So, 1, 2, 3. Lunch. Okay. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, I'm going to tell them 14, and that means if you want to change your mind, please come. Our plans for March is to get us ready for our April speaker. Our April speaker is a real live agent. Oh, is that right?
She's not coming until September.
Okay, well, who's coming in April?
April is open right now.
Okay.
I thought April was, we were going to be learning how to submit query letters.
That's March.
Oh, okay, never mind.
But we're in March. Kim and I and Linda, we're going to work on query letters to help us get those perfect 300 words. What, Linda?
We had someone scheduled.
Okay.
Couldn't, and I had.
Okay, gotcha. So
April is still.
okay. Oh, we're going to have some fun in April.
I hope to get.
Okay, great. We're hoping, that'll be great. All right, thank you. I'm sorry, I should have checked with you before I said anything. But anyway, if you've got a work in progress, boy, we want you to have it ready by September so that we're going to try to schedule appointments with that agent so that you can have a one-on-one with that agent. We're going to go through a vetting process, of course, just to keep her, let her choose the ones that she wants to speak with, and then we'll be letting you know. So get your works in progress ready, and we will have a real live, honest-to-goodness agent here to speak with us. Okay, the next thing is, like I said, there's a new position open. If you are interested in being our social chairman to work on the TikTok or Twitter, X, or Facebook, and Insta. So if you are interested in doing that, please let me or KJ or Kim know about it, or Linda. And boy, we will sign you up. We would love to have you on the board. It's the board meets every month, the last Saturday of the month. At this time, we are going to the United that's way out on 114th and Slide, and we will meet at 10 o'clock on Saturday mornings. And we try to keep the meetings at 1 o'clock. I mean, for an hour. An hour every time, hopefully. All right. Now. Our speaker of our author spotlight today is KJ, and she's going to tell us about her time series and the things that she's got working on, going great guns right now. Thank you.
Thank you. This is what happens when you miss a board meeting. You get put in author spotlight. Not that I didn't want to talk, but I really want to hear from all of you. So some of you folks need to get brave and come up here and tell us about your stories. Mine was kind of boring to me because I already know it. I want to hear yours. So I'm going to set my timer so I don't go crazy here. Okay. My writing journey started in 1996. Only in the fact that I listened to Outlander series on audio and fell in love with Diana Gabaldon's time travel. It's a World War II nurse that goes back in time. And I thought, how cool would that be to write a book? And I thought, no, I'm too unorganized. I don't know how to write well. Whatever. My career's been in marketing, so I write, but not fiction. So fast forward to I'm pregnant, 8 months pregnant with my second child. This is much further down the road, and my entire department got laid off. I was the director of marketing and communications for a national behavioral healthcare company. And in case you didn't know, it's really hard to interview when you're 8 months pregnant. So luckily, my husband, he was an attorney, and they offered to pay my salary and give a raise to him. So I was like, sweet, I can stay home with the children. And we could eat, so it was good. Fast forward another couple of years, well, another year or two after that, and I realized that I was kind of bored. I love children, we had a lot of fun, but finger painting isn't really an intellectual challenge. So I thought, what if I wrote a book? And I thought, no, I can't do that. But I read Diana Gabaldon's book called Outlander's Companion, and that's where she talks about how she wrote, how she writes, what the different characters are. She has like a map of all the different places and everything. And in it, she talks about how she writes in a super unorganized manner. She writes a scene, and then she writes a scene, and then another one, and somehow she connects them all. I thought, oh, I can do that. That's a mess. I can do mess. And she's selling her fiction. So I thought, all right, I need a project. I'm kind of like finger painting and hanging out with very short people, and I thought, well, let's try it. So I was living in Virginia Beach at that point. We had Hurricane Isabel come through, which was exciting, but I didn't think too much about hurricanes until we moved to Florida. My husband was a lawyer, working full-time, 90 plus hours a week, and decided that he would like to be a dad too. It's hard to do both. So he quit his job, decided to be a teacher, and that brought us to Florida, north of Orlando. And we moved, 2 kids, a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, and 3 days later, Hurricane Charlie hit. And that summer, 2004, in 6 weeks, we had 4 major hurricanes cross directly over our house. We were dead center. We came from both coasts. I thought, this means something. I got to do something with this. And I had a little idea of the time travel something. Time travel is rife with possibilities. You can go anywhere, anytime, any place. And then you can go somewhere completely different in the next book and no one will call you on it because that's how time travel works. I thought, this is pretty cool. I would like to do more. So we did. And we took a trip. We were in Florida and drove to Maine on vacation. And I don't know if you've looked at a map, but that's a pretty long trip. So I had lots of time. The kids were strapped. They were safe. And I could write a book. So I started plotting. And I thought I plotted a book until I sat and told one of my friends my story. And she's like, that's at least 3 books. I'm like, okay, fine. So I had to figure out how to make it one book, have an end and start. And so I published my first book in December of 2014. And between the time I started writing and that moment, I had moved from Florida to Texas. My husband got a job at Texas Tech Law. I had a baby, my 3rd child, and I had a terrible back injury and back surgery. And that brought me sitting on the couch for about 6 months, and Twitter was out. And so I was on Twitter, chatting it up with other authors, trying to figure out what they were doing. A lot of them were doing self-publishing, and I met some really great people that gave me some great advice. Some of them gave me bad advice, but we didn't know. We were all figuring it out. Self-publishing was very young at that point. And I met Suzanne Kalman, who's a good friend of mine now. We were publishing books at the exact same time. And around that time, since I've learned a lot, I also decided to start helping other authors with their journey. This is the first book I helped Suzanne with her book cover. I'll pass this around because I found each of these actresses that are in the picture. These are friends of mine and various people. Suzanne had given me her, she dressed up as each of the characters because she's an actress. And I created the same outfits and found people that were similar and we took pictures. And so her first book came out at the same time my first book came out, Stealing Time. And here's my first book, time travel set in a hurricane. Who would have thought, right? Based in Florida, and all the hurricane stuff happens in my books that happen to me, except for hers is a lot worse, obviously. But I started doing book covers. My best friend, Jody Smyers, is a professional photographer, and he says, hey, I'll help you do your book covers. So he helped me do all my covers. I started doing covers for other people. And when an author, I'll pass these around, an author, a friend of mine, said, hey, I'm about to do a series. And he asked us to find a model and do some pictures. You want to answer these books, I'm not going to say anything bad about them, but I don't know if you really want to go get them. But look at the cover. We found the actress, we dressed her, the model, I should say. Really fun project. So I'm going to take off my Blondie's custom book covers. Fast forward, I'm still writing books. In 2014, I put my first book out. Suzanne was about to put out her second book, and I was almost there, but not quite. And so I decided to set out a short story that I called Blow. And it's based on a hurricane. It was just kind of a marketing ploy to keep my readers interested until I got my second book out, and so I did. But I had a Facebook launch party with Suzanne, showing her, I was kind of supporting her and launching her second book, and in that party, I teased the word blow. I had a bubble, I had a hairdryer, I had a blowtorch, trying to have people guess what I was about to release at the end of the Facebook party. And at the end of it, I released my book, Blow, which is here. It's just a short story, so I don't have a real one, but we used a mirror and powdered sugar for the hands of the clock. I'll pass this around just because I think it's hilarious. It wasn't really cocaine, I swear, but we did put that together. Not much in. But anyway, so at the end of that Facebook party, I gave everyone a free copy, and I said, here's my new book. And I didn't think much of it. I went to bed. Next morning, I woke up with strep throat, so I was just snoozing around. Suzanne texted me and said, your book is at number 8 on Amazon. I was like, what? Hadn't even really put it on social media yet. So I was pretty excited. I think the market has changed a lot. It's not quite as easy to do that, but it gave me a lot of excitement and thrills to write anywhere. And so then I put my second book out, and to my utter delight, it appeared on Amazon between my two favorite authors, Diana Gabaldon and Michael Crichton's Dragon Teeth. And I was like, how on earth did this happen? But that's the beauty of building your author platform. You have your website, your social media, and I had so much fun with that on that Facebook party with Suzanne. I said, we need to do something together. What about a podcast? So I talked her into it for an entire year. We did one episode a week. We interviewed authors, local, whatnot. I interviewed Kim, interviewed Linda, Jody Thomas, and our very first episode was Dorinda Jones. I had met her at something at Barnes & Noble, and she was super interesting. She ended a contest and won and had all these people bidding over her, even though she was just a stay-at-home mom hanging out at home. Entered the contest just to make her meet that deadline. So a lot of inspiring stories on there. We called it Blondie and the Brit. It's still out there. It's on iTunes. You can find it if you want. Especially listen to Linda and Kim. They were great interviews. And then, so Suzanne and I have kind of worked together throughout this whole thing. And I encourage you to find writing buddies. We meet once a week now. We talk about marketing. We get all excited for each other's new releases. She's, of course, released about, 8 or 9 books, and I'm still out. No one on number 4. But what I'm doing now is I'm writing the 4th book in the Stealing Time series called Fractured Time. I'm also starting a new series called Blondie's Diner, and it's going to have several books. That one I am going to pitch an agent, so I'm very excited about March, learning how to pitch. I've written that one to market This book is a little hard to market because it's like Outlander, which kind of hits a lot of different areas. It's historical fantasy, it's sci-fi, it's adventure, there's a lot in it. So it's hard to peg down. It's also a little bit harder to market. My next book is very genre specific, women's fiction, cozy mystery, small town. So I'm like, okay, that's something that a publisher can look at. I never did decide to publish this book traditionally because I met with a guy when I was getting ready to publish. He was in the publishing industry, and he told me that it might take 2 years for them to come back to you and say no, and then you'd go and pitch someone else. And I thought, I do not have that kind of patience. I am not doing that. So I did. I self-published and learned a lot. I mean, I made a lot of mistakes, but it was a blast. That's my 10 minutes. So I did want to say one more thing. One of the things that I do, I have right now, my Lots of Sensitive Covers has turned into KJ Waters Consultancy. And I have a free monthly meeting that I just offer marketing advice. Usually the group gets together and tells me what they want me to deep dive into. I do a little research. And so you are all invited. We meet usually the third Monday. I have a little sheet right here with a QR code that has the Facebook page to join. And I'll put you on the email too so that we can tell you if we move locations. We just meet at the United on 19th and Quaker. Last month we did AI tools for authors. There's a whole bunch of really cool free tools out there that take your entire novel, spit out some development edits, and a bunch of other ones that help you write things, help you write marketing copy. So that was what we did last month. That's the kind of thing we do. How to use BookFunnel, how to use BookBub, lots of cool marketing things, and then some writing things as well, the Save the Cat method, things like that. So if you're interested, you can QR code that or come talk to me. I'd love to have you. Whoever's in that group now, raise your hand. There's some folks in this room. Mathis, Lauren, James, Dan. Jan pretends she is bright. She doesn't come, but she's there in spirit. I feel you.
I know, I'm going to surprise you.
Yeah. But it's a small enough group that we can kind of really get some things done. And it's a lot of fun. I love it. So anyway. I did bring a copy of the last book cover I did. This is for Wayne Hughes. This was the guy that did our audio program a few months ago. Lots of fun this is like completely designed. His idea was a old guy with his head chopped open and clouds coming out. I thought, well, maybe we can get something else. I don't know. Not sure how many people are reading crazy old guy books. And then, I don't know if y'all remember Mike Greer, used to be a member. Passed away a few years ago. He did his autobiography with us too. It was really fun just to kind of hear his life story and help him, get that down on paper. So anyway, that's my spiel. Anybody have any questions? Hope not. Okay. Next. Good morning. My name is Kimberly Harris. Welcome to Capital Writers and Illustrators. I did want to, DK forgot to mention, it's time to renew your membership. So if you have not renewed your membership, you are invited to do that ASAP. We appreciate it. I am president-elect this year, and so that means I'm in charge of fundraising, which I didn't realize until after I said I did. But so I don't have anything set yet, but I have applied to do some of those group fundraiser things like at Chipotle and at Minchie's. So if we get the dates, then it's the kind of thing where you're like, go to Minchie's and get some yogurt and tell them that you're the Capital Writers, and then the group will get a portion of the proceeds. And we have a few other fun things, fundraisery type things planned or in the works anyway, in the midst of being planned. So be watching out for that. But we are raising funds for a couple of things. We have. We want to be able to pay a stipend to outside visitors coming in, like the agent who's coming in, and like last year we had Karen Whitmire from Adelaide, so that's kind of a trick, to come on your own dime. And now that we're 4 years old, it's time for us to level up, and we're wanting to be able to have the funds to pay a stipend for people traveling in. So that's what your tickets for the raffle go to. So if you haven't got a raffle ticket, get a raffle ticket. That's what these fundraisers are going to go for. And then hopefully next year we're going to have an even bigger event. So be watch the space for those things. And now it's my pleasure to introduce James Villanueva, award-winning writer and educator, is the author of Remembering Slaton, Texas, Centennial Stories, 1911 to 2011. And I forgot to mention, he brought cookies from Slaton Bakery. The world famous Slaton Bakery. Published by the History Press and the young adult novel Flick, he has been featured in several publications, including Texas Monthly, Latino Lubbock Magazine, and the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. He has presented and been a special guest speaker for several writing workshops and conferences throughout the United States. The teleplay for his novel Flick was an entry in the Austin Film Festival. The Secret Language of Prairie Dogs, this is his newest book, is his third full-length book. Please join me in welcoming James.
All right. First of all, thank you guys so much for allowing me to be here. It's still a little unreal to me that I write books. My friends who know me are like, but you're a mess, James. Like, how do you do that? But it's the same thing. Like, my stories are all over the place, and somehow they magically come together and become a book, and then it scares me so much that I put it out into the world. So here I am today. I think the last time I spoke actually was at New York City Pride. So a little bit different. That was a very, very scary event for me, but it was really cool to land in New York City, to be a part of the spoken word series with the Publishing Triangle. They had reached out to me. It was kind of one of those dream come true things. And it was surreal to be talking about West Texas in New York City and actually have people in New York City that had read the book, that had learned a little bit more about West Texas and the culture here. And I didn't really tell them that my book is, it's not always like that, it's kind of fiction, but it's our world, we get to create it, right? So a little bit about my past. Like I said, it's weird that I write books, but most authors, they come from a weird background to escape like that way. But I like to start out with, I did grow up on a chicken farm outside of Lubbock, Texas, and a little place called Acuff. Grew up in migrant housing. My grandfather raised me with my grandmother, and it was just fun times. Like we didn't have a telephone. Our TV had like the wire antennas and whatnot. So we spent a lot of time outside, just exploring, escaping rattlesnakes. Lots of fun. Very different from my life today. Very, very different from my life today. But it was just a great, great experience. I had no idea we were dirt poor. I didn't care. I thought it was really cool when it would rain, and we had like holes in the floor, like by our door, that we had to like cover with towels and whatnot to keep the weather out, basically. But it was cool when it rained, little frogs would hop into the house and I would just chase them around. To me, that was a magical world. I remember one day my grandmother woke up to make tortillas on the stove and whatnot, this old stove in this old house. And there was a snake on the stove that had like chased a rat inside. Coolest thing for me. Very fun stuff for me. But I would go to school, and nobody knew that I had that background. And actually, I went to Roosevelt, so a lot of kids had that background. But we were ashamed of it. We hid that from each other. We didn't explore that at all. And it wasn't until several years that I realized the magic in an upbringing like that. My grandmother was a curandera. And so I learned about the magic of spells. I learned about the magic of energies and of healing. And we have people come over, all walks of life, come over, and she would heal them, and she would do the eggs and the candles and the sage. And I loved that as a kid, but then I became a teenager. And some reason or another, teenagers, they kind of start thinking differently. And I grew up in a world, it was the 90s, of Beverly Hills 90210. So that's what I thought. In order to be successful, A, you had to be rich, you had to be white, you had to be straight, you had to have all these things that I wasn't. But I tried so hard to be that, and became captain of my cheerleading squad. And so it was at that moment that I didn't have to come out of the closet, but I did learn that being gay and of color and in West Texas, I had to get rid of everything that I knew from my world, all that magic from my childhood. I had to be ashamed of that. I had to hide that. And also my mother, my real mother, she had me at 15. She ran off with some other man who didn't necessarily take to me. He dropped me off at my grandparents' house and said he doesn't want to raise a half-black child. And that was one of the first memories I had, was just being disowned, basically, at a very, very young age. And which was good, because then my mother ran off. I lived with them for a year, and that was a totally different world for me also. Poor upbringing, but there were several strangers living in one house. We shared a room, and this was when I was about 6 years old. We shared a room. I shared a room with my mom and her new husband, I guess. I don't know. And then I remember there was a guy with a glass eye that lived there, and that was a little interesting to me. There was another man that would come in and out of the home, and this was in Southland, Texas, which is where my book takes place, actually. There were a lot of drug dealers, a lot of drug runners. My world changed. I went from like this magic to this really dark world. And when you're a kid, you can't really understand that. You can't really understand that you really should not be in an environment that way and in a situation like that. But I took those experiences, started writing. I loved journaling. I would journal. I would read a lot. I would hide away and read. And you start shutting down. And that's kind of what saved me, was jumping into these worlds, exploring these worlds. And then whenever I got older, went off to college, that's when I kind of thought, I kind of like to write. I kind of like to tell my story, and I didn't realize the power of telling my story just yet. It wasn't until years and years later, I'm working at a newspaper in Slaton, Texas. I'm the newspaper editor for the Slate Night. And this was after I had some issues. I was living in Chicago for a brief moment, going to grad school, and I had some issues with addiction. I had some issues with things that I never thought I would get into. But once again, openly gay, kid, West Texas, you have these stigmas that you carry with you throughout your life, and you have these little moments of micro aggression that tear you down more and more and more and more until you become exactly what they think of you. And that's what I did. I had become exactly what they thought of me. So I had a breakdown in Chicago, and I was like, there's more to life. I was that kid that was never going to go back to the farm. I was never going to go back to Slaton, Texas. But there I was on a Greyhound bus at home, knocking on my grandmother's door, and was just like, I need help. And it was the best thing I ever did for myself. I had no car, I had no job, I had no money. I had a bright, shiny degree that was super expensive, but that's all I had. I remember there was an article in the newspaper. They were looking for a reporter there in Slaton, Texas. At that point, I had already written an article for Texas Monthly Magazine, my coming out story, which I was the first gay man featured in Texas Monthly Magazine. Had come out. And so I went to that interview. I walked to that interview, walked down the street, right past the library that growing up I would go and read from. Walked down the street, I had my writing portfolio. I walked in, Joe Davis was the editor at the time, and I said, hey, I saw you have a job opening. He opened my writing portfolio, he saw the Texas Monthly, and he said, okay, you're hired. So the first year, I would walk to interviews, I would interview people in the town. I had gotten away from like a very toxic culture, very toxic lifestyle. I was like, this is interesting, this is new, this is different. And I explored a town in a world that was always there, but I never saw it. I didn't know it, but people were allowing me into their homes. People were bringing me into their homes. And before I turned 30, I started blogging about that experience. I'm like, wow, there's some interest here. The blog started gaining traction, and just that idea of life in a small town and the really cool stories that existed. People were reading them from all over the place. So I was like, this is kind of fun. I'm getting my voice back. I'm discovering who I am by telling others' stories. So I blogged about the 100-year history of Slaton. They were turning 100 at that time, the city was. And I started interviewing people who were turning 100 the same year that Slaton was turning 100. And their stories were just so full of life. And I also did something that Slaton, Texas didn't want me to do. And I still hear about it to this day. I started writing about the race issues in Slaton, Texas. I started opening up about how people of color really feel, and interviewing people of color. Because for so long, their stories were not told. They just weren't. Even to this day, there's a lot of... West Texas is an interesting place. Whenever I talk about West Texas to my friends in New York, I say it's a land of extremes. You have extreme politics, you have extreme weather, you have extreme hair. It's just extremes in West Texas. And you also have very extreme racial lines. And it's one of those things, unless we discuss it and unless we talk about it, they are always going to be there. And there are a lot of people who don't want me to discuss it and don't want me to talk about it and don't want to bring it up. Like to say, it's just history. One day I was working on a piece and someone that I actually respected a whole lot, a former principal there in Slaton, I was writing about 1950s, and she's like, oh, the good old days. And I was like, for who? For who? Because some of these stories I'm reading, they weren't so good. They weren't so happy. And a lot of people, they don't want to hear that. They don't want to hear the sad story. They don't want to hear about the angry, vigilant black man up here who's so scary, They don't want to hear that. In the 1920s, there was a KKK march in Slaton, one of the biggest in the States. They didn't want to hear about that. They didn't want to hear about the priest, the Catholic priest who was tarred and feathered out in a cotton field. And it was nationality related, I guess, because he was German. And at that time, they didn't like Germans. And now it's predominantly a German town. That's how it works. Well, now it's predominantly Latino town, because that's how it works also. And I got a lot of backlash. In fact, another, and I'm not going to mention their name, another writer put out another book about Slaton history to purposely leave all of that out. I was told I need to be careful what I'm writing about. I was told that, I got a really, really lovely letter in the newspaper, letter to the editor that was, why is this outsider coming in telling our story? Not realizing that I was born in Slaton, Texas, 1981, 2 weeks prior to the hospital shutting down, being the last baby actually born in Slaton, Texas. But I was still considered an outsider. And I don't say that to make people feel guilty. I don't talk about the racial issues to make people feel uncomfortable, but growth only happens when you're uncomfortable. And I didn't even realize the inner struggles I had with race and gender and sexuality and all of the checklists that I fit, which, real side note, quick story, it's funny when I came out to my mom, she's like, but you're half black, don't you have enough already? So, all these check marks that were supposed to be silenced and not talked about, I came in and started talking about them. And a lot of people ask me why I still live in Slaton, Texas, because you look up Slaton, Texas, and there's my face. And it's a face that a lot of people don't like seeing it, but it's fine. I'm okay with that. But it's still being seen, and it's still in the room, and it's still being heard. And then I went and wrote a little YA novel called Flick, and it was kind of about my cheerleading days, being a male cheerleader in West Texas, and the fun with stories that, and it was cute and fun, but it wasn't my real story. I was being happy. I still wanted to sell books, and the reality of the business is, if they don't buy it, what's the point? And that is the reality. So a few years, I started thinking about my childhood. I started thinking about those magical times and those magical moments out on the farm. I started thinking about living with drug cartel members. I started thinking about all those moments. I'm like, why don't I write about that? I think that's kind of a cool book. And I didn't even know where to start because the shame was so ingrained in me. I had no idea. I didn't think anyone would read it. You don't read these books. They don't exist. I remember growing up and going to the library every day almost, and I was like, where's the book that I can relate to? I get it. We read Romeo and Juliet in 9th grade. I can't relate to that. I think one of the most important books we read freshman year was To Kill a Mockingbird. But once again, it was that white savior. It was, these poor black people, but I never even read Latinos. I couldn't even think of a book where the main character was Latino, or even gay, or any of that. I was like, where do I fit in? I think I deserve to be a main character as well. I had for so long made myself the side character in the world because that's what the world painted me as. That's what the world told me I was. I was always the side character. And even in the publishing industry today, I mean, look around. Look around. There's not very many people that look like me in the publishing industry, in the publishing world. And so there aren't very many main characters. And even in Flick, I made the main character almost whitewashed, basically. And then even the cover, I remember I had someone point out, there's a little white people on the cover of your book. And I'm like, that's interesting, because it's written by a Latino author, but, they gotta sell it somehow. And they didn't think black people buy books, or Latino boys need a hero that isn't a drug dealer, or a hero that doesn't want to be a gang member. And I was like, where is that book? And finally I was like, James, you gotta write that book. And I took a page from Bless Me Ultima, which is, I think that was one of the first and only books where I read where the main character was Latino. And I was like, is that all? That's all we get? They have Bless Me Ultima, there you go, you have yours. And in the industry today, it's still very much like that. As much as you go to Barnes & Noble and you see more people of color, more diversity, but there's so many other writers rejected because they found their one. They found this one. So we don't need that. We're good for this year. Thank you. Try again next year. I got a lot of that. And I'm sorry. I am on pedestal. This is my pedestal. But it was during the pandemic. I had written a book called The Sweet Taste of Bread several years ago. It wasn't picked up by anybody, but it was about a guy, and it was two boys, and it was their journey, and I wanted this to be some beautiful, literary work, kind of, Truman Capote type, two different worlds. One kid goes to prison, one kid becomes a faith healer, and how their lives collide, and someone dies on death row. There was just too much. There was too much book. And every time I'd send it to publishers or agents, they were like, we like the story of the kid. We like them when they were kids. We like them when they were, and I kept getting that over and over and over again. So during the pandemic, I took that manuscript out. I was like, okay, maybe there's something here. And I got rid of everything and just started over, and I'm like, what about just one moment in their lives when these two guys meet, and I want them to fall in love, and I want them to have a love story. What would happen if you are all writers in here, what would happen if one guy was a faith healer, a good identical? And then I remember I thought back to my grandmother and all the magic she taught me and how she told me, and it was a very magical moment. She was like, you have a soft voice. She was like, you have a gentle spirit. She saw something in me when I was a kid. She was like, if you work hard enough and you practice, you could be a good identical. You could be a great good identical. And I was like, what would happen if I would have stayed on that track? What would happen if I didn't go to college, or I didn't try to be like Beverly Hills 90210? If I didn't, who would that person be? And at the time I was struggling with alcoholism, and I was like, where is this coming from? I do a lot of inner work. Where is this coming from? What do I keep trying to escape? What do I keep trying to hide from? Who do I keep trying to please? And I was trying to find validation in this world that wasn't going to validate me anyways. And I'm glad I found it in my late 30s, early 40s. I woke up one day and I was like, it's time to tell my story. It's time to tell my story, whatever that story may be. And I sat down and just started writing and writing and writing. And at this time, I didn't even know it. I was teaching, that explains the alcoholism. But I was teaching and I was trying to escape, but I just kept coming back to this book, and I kept coming back to this main character, Santos, who has to hide who he is, and he's a curandero. He's a faith healer, but no one can know that he's a faith healer because he works with drug cartels, he works with coyotes, so he goes to school and has to be this all-American boy, and he's smart, and he wants to be a writer, but he has all this magic going on at home, and he has to hide and juggle those two worlds. And as I was writing this book, I myself started healing. And magical things started happening. Some really crazy magic. I started opening up about my grandmother being a curandera. I started opening up about, maybe what if I had that magic in me? And in order to be a writer, you have to believe in the magic. You just do. I started going back to that, and I'm like, what if I do have this ability to heal? What if I am a curandero? And slowly, I started healing myself, and I woke up one day, and I was like, I'm done. I'm done hating myself. I'm done living the life that I don't want to live. I'm done being depressed. I quit drinking that day, haven't touched alcohol since. Thank you. And I quit my job. Whoa. And it was one of those things, I quit my job. I was terrified. I was like, what, but somehow the universe, the magic started happening. It started coming to me. Then people started coming up to me and telling me about their magical journeys and about how their brothers, and this magical world opened up to me. And at the time, I was editing this book, and the book was about to be released. And that's partly why I quit my job. I'm like, okay, I have a book coming out. And I started going on tour, and then I ended up in these magical places. All of a sudden, I wake up one day depressed, lonely, sad, hating my life, and then 2 weeks later, I'm on tour in Mexico, like on a private beach, in private houses, and then I'm in New York, and then, the world just opened up once I released myself from the world and started believing in the magic within me, and then it just started kind of happening, which is how they say it happens. I wish I would have known that sooner. I would have saved a lot more money and a lot more heartache. But it happened when it was supposed to happen. And then my friends were like, maybe you're manifesting this healing journey by writing about it, by writing the book. I was like, you know what? Maybe. Sorry, it's a lot. It's a lot that's happening. And on New Year's Eve of this year, it was my first New Year's Eve sober. Everybody was going to the parties, everybody was doing the things, and I was like, I just need a moment, I need some time to myself. So I spent New Year's at home with my dog, and, meditated, did my, healing on New Year's Eve, and then I woke up at 4 a.m., and I decided to hike the Caprock Canyon. So I woke up at 4 a.m., not realizing and forgetting how dark it gets out in the countryside at 4 a.m. in January, December 31st. Woke up, I left everything behind, and ironically, and here, sorry, spoiler alert, I have a character eaten by wild dogs, but I'm running through the canyon, hearing these coyotes, and I'm like, oh my god, I manifested it. I gotta stop doing this. Run up the canyon. I reached the top of the canyon around, it was 7:50 because I had time to just drive. I was like, that's when the sun's gonna rise, 7:50. I reached the top at 7:50, start seeing the sunrise, and just have the most amazing moment. I have this breakdown. I have this and I'm just crying, and then I'm like, I left it behind. And this is the first time I've talked about that in a group. I left that behind. I left the hurt. I left the shame. I left the fear. I left it all behind, and I get to rise on this new day, on this new journey. And in my blogs, I write a blog called mygay40s.com. I wrote in my blog how I'm like, I still have all the time in the world. And so it's just starting. The journey is just starting. And now I think back and I'm like, wow, if I hadn't, first of all, what would have happened if I hadn't been taught all that shame? If I would have just, if I would have just allowed to have my voice, how boring would that be? How boring would that be? But now I get to have that voice, and now I get to talk about it on TikToks. I get to do my readings. And now instead of just writing a little book because I wanted to write a book, it's become this really cool little movement of people on a healing journey and people talking about healing. And even on my blog and my TikToks, the other day I got 25,000 views on TikTok. And now people are reaching out. And so it stopped being about this Latino gay boy who's poor in South Texas, and people started relating to it in terms of we're all on this journey, and we're all trying to heal. In fact, I was up late last night, a former student's mother reaching out to me because she's suffering from alcoholism. And I had to talk her through that. And now I'm a family therapist. I work with the Texas Family First programs. And I sit there, and all I do is basically listen to people tell me their struggles and their stories, and we talk about empowering ourselves. And now we're working on a program with Texas Family First because they're like, what are you doing? You have a success rate. I'm like, I'm giving people the power to tell their stories. I'm giving people that power to own their stories and not be ashamed of their stories. And we do a lot of journaling. We do a lot of writing. storytelling format, story structure format. I don't have to grade their work, which is amazing, and they actually want to do it. But even with that, I was like, wow, the power of telling your story. And I write fiction, and I don't know who said it. Some author said, like, if you write the truth, no one will believe you anyways, so you might as well write fiction. But there's elements of who you are in everything you write. And another moment where I was like, this is kind of cool. This may be something. This may be a story. It was December of last year. And this goes to with like trying to find an agent, trying to sell your book. You can tell your story. I can sit here and have fluffy words all day. That's just what I do. That's the story format, story element. But unless you sell it, unless someone's interested, that's the reality of it. But I'm taking a shower. Roosevelt High School is in the regional playoffs for football, which was unheard of when I was in school. So I was like, I have to see this for myself. So then my phone, and I've been like sending to agents. Even my dream agents, I've been pitching at conferences, pitching at workshops. And people were, the bites, it was really cool when I would say my pitch. I went to one conference and I pitched 5 agents and they all requested the manuscript. So it was really cool. And I was like, starting a little ego there, like, okay, maybe there's something here. So I pitched Michael Moray's Barack Obama's literary agent. And he works with Michelle Obama. And I'm like, whatever, I'm a slush pop kid, whatever. But my phone's ringing. I'm in the shower and I see that it's from LA and I had like pitched all these other agents. And I saw the LA number and I like immediately jump out of the shower. And it was Michael Bure on the phone. And he's like, I want to talk to you about your manuscript. I think it's really interesting and really unique. And I'm like, yes, sir. Okay, yes, sir. And like he didn't sign me on. He gave me such amazing feedback about. He's like people from us. We don't get these stories. We don't get these stories. It's so unique. How did you think of this? And I was like, I grew up with this. This is my life. And he was like, that is really a really cool thing. He's like, I want to work with you a little bit more. Let's keep you writing though. And to get like a conversation like that with Michael Ray, to get feedback like that. And I'm sitting there. I take a moment. I'm sitting on my bathroom floor. I hang up. I'm still naked. I'm like, this is really weird. So eventually I put my clothes on, but I leave, and it was the craziest thing, and I thought, that idea, that moment, that telling your story, wow, just wow, and now I get to help others do that, and just the magic that has happened since then. So, I'll tell you a little bit more about my book. I know it's been all about me for the past, I don't know how long. My book is called The Secret Language of Prairie Dogs. And this is my pitch, this is what I pitch agents, is 17-year-old Santos Ramos is a curandero living in desolate West Texas. When a new boy crosses the border through a sinister smuggler, Santos finds himself falling fast in love for the voiceless visitor. So what happens in The Secret Languages of Prairie Dogs is Santos curandero. He's 17 years old. He's a curandero. He's had to hide this because the drug cartels, the coyotes, and he has to keep his identity a secret. And his mother helps him through it, and she keeps him a secret as well. And they live in Southland, Texas. So people travel from all over the world to come see him. And the thing about Curandísimo and Curanderos is it's very real and very alive in West Texas. It's this, I think it's this beautiful culture. Actually, I was at my curandera the other day. It's this beautiful culture of healing and grounding work and finding where your demons are coming from, finding which is ironic because that's what we do in therapy, inner child work, grounding, trauma responses. It's the same thing, people. It's the same thing. And so, Santos is this curandero, and he's also gay. And he's struggling with that and trying to figure out who he is. And then he has his friends who have their lives. One kid, his parents are lawyers. One kid, his parents are farmers. It's very typical West Texas. You just have this world of these kids just trying to find themselves. And Santos is living in this magical world that he's hiding. And whenever Dusettle arrives, Dusettle lost his voice. He can't speak. He's afraid to open up. He is shut down. And if Santos doesn't get him to speak, because he has to pay the coyote for crossing him over, and if the coyote doesn't get his money, then Dusettle disappears in the fields like so many boys like him before. And in the process of that, Santos and Dusettle end up falling in love. So, Santos, if he doesn't save the love of his life, he loses the love of his life. So the stakes are a little high. The stakes are a little high. And at the same time, someone in that town is trying to find out who this curandero is. There's whispers of this mythical, magical witch living amongst the town. And so finally, that's found out about him and whatnot. But halfway through the story, we learn the story stops being about Santos and about his journey, and really the journey we're all on, and it starts being about his friends are all hiding something also. His friends are all trying to figure themselves out also. And I won't give away too much, but he learns by being his authentic self, it allowed others to be their authentic self. And magical things and fun things started happening. And so, back to the canyon run and try not to be eaten by wild dogs on New Year's Eve. See, that's how I write. So, but that's not, we have editors, we help organize it. But I was like, and now I have a blog called mygay40s.com, another plug right there. See how I did that? So, on that blog, I talk about the journey and the healing journey. I talk about being a gay sober man living in West Texas, and the fun that is. So much to do. But I took a picture for my blog, and it was me like arms raised and watching the sunrise, and wrote this piece about, what, I did it, so can you, we're out of the darkness, this is the moment. And it was, and I meet up with my friends on New Year's Day, because we're having Black Eyed Peas, we're having a little Black Eyed Peas potluck, and I was like, the best mood. They were all hungover and talking about the drama from the night before, and I was like, I feel great. I just ran through the canyon, I'm feeling good, had breakfast, and they're like, let me tell you what happened last night. I was like, see, I knew it. So I've been there, done that. And I showed them the picture, and they were like, James, this is your book cover. I didn't realize it, but I had manifested my book cover. Once again, and it's one of those writing your books. I know you're all writers, writing your books, telling your stories. Once again, the magic that lies within it. So keep writing. If you have any questions, just let me know. But also just that idea of authentic, your authentic voice. It's okay. It's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to write what scares you. And it's okay, and that's the connection, the human connection. I'm sure we all want to sell books, but we're not going to sell it. Agents aren't going to buy it. publishers aren't going to pick it up if they don't believe it, and if you don't even believe it yourself, it won't happen. It just won't. But I don't know. Maybe it does. I don't know. It's a weird. You know this industry. It's a weird industry.
I know.
It's a weird industry. You become a TikTok sensation, and you get 5 book deals right out of that. Yeah. But so that's kind of my story. That's how I landed here today. It's been a journey. It's been a journey. So any questions?
I have a comment.
Something else.
I am, actually. I'm super excited. This is the first time I've written in a sober mindset. And like the clarity is so, and then also with the TFF program, I work all over West Texas. Like I have to go to another town this afternoon and sit down. Oh my God, the stories. And I'm court-ordered and I'm court-appointed, and there are some rough, I mean, not to, this might get me in trouble, but I've worked with Aryan, members of the Aryan Nation, had moments with them, a lot of meth addiction on meth here is bad, so incredibly sad. But once again, and now I'm kind of straying away from young adult. I'm I wrote that story. I wrote the story. I wanted to there. So I'm kind of writing from my life right now and seeing what happens there and seeing what happens to Santos when he does grow up. And seeing what happens to Santos when he finally gets to be his true, authentic self. And seeing, oh my God, West Texas is wow, not only the landscape here, but the people with forgotten stories and tells, and they don't necessarily have the resources to be writers. They don't think they can be writers. And sometimes they are sitting there telling me a story that is just filled with such richness. Such richness. I had a client once who was about to go to prison and just had a lot of things happen to him in his life. And the night before he left, and I get to be with these people before some really major, big things happen in their lives. I sat with people with their ninth baby because of cocaine addiction. They don't realize the power of their stories. And at the end of whenever I work with them and whenever I have to release them, when they start realizing the power of their stories, and I'm like, there's a book there. Such cool stuff. And people think that drugs are a city thing. People think that this harsh living on the streets are a city thing. No, it happens in our rural towns. And it's just the power that they could have if they had that resource to tell their stories. So, working on some right there.
Good.
You mentioned Bless Me Ultima, and I was required to read that book for an anthropology class at Texas Tech, and it changed my life. To this day, that is my most favorite book. This little boy in the book and his grandmother comes to live with them, and their lives vastly different than what I grew up with, but yet he had the same fears I had. He had the same questions about religion that I had. He had the same sorts of things that they did, that we did in maybe a different way, but I realized what a commonality we have, and yet so different. So I began to see the whole world as the human race at that time in my life, and we do have a commonality, especially when we're young. And as we get older, we learn other things that we shouldn't learn. But I remember I got to meet Rudolph Anaya. He came to the little community college I taught.
UNM,
Yeah.
He's a UNM professor.
You bet. He was amazing, and he came and spoke with us. I got to have lunch with him with a group of people and dinner with him, and I was just almost afraid to talk to him because I held him on such a high pedestal because his books were, I just loved everything. And he had done other books since then, but Bless Me Ultima was the greatest thing. So if you've never read that, and I'll be reading yours now that I've heard you talk about it because I've got to hear the story. sorry, but we do have a commonality, and we need to appreciate that.
Well, thank you for stating that. Yeah, especially like Bless Me Ultima. And in fact, whenever I was pitching agents, that's what I would call it, a modern day Bless Me Ultima. And that was one of the only books that I can think of where it was a male lead Latino character coming of age. I don't think I've ever read anything else like it. So it's a very important in our literary landscape. So yeah, thank you for stating that. And the movie was really good too.
Oh, yes,
I
I
really
actually
enjoyed the movie.
enjoyed that.
And I think that stage productions of it
Yeah.
is just, they need to be teaching it in every school. But the attack on our school systems, which is another thing, because that one's kind of challenged a lot also, ironically, sadly.
What are you working on next?
Just working with the TFF and whatnot, I'll go a little bit more into kind of what I'm working on. I'm exploring the magic just a little bit more from an adult angle, from an adult point of view. And especially since I did my therapy, I did my counseling, I'm staying strong in my sobriety. I kind of want to explore like themes of adulthood and the healing journey, but I kind of want to throw some grandissimo in this like fictional world of adventure and of drugs and alcohol and sex and stuff that I was not allowed to talk about in YA novels. Real stories! But I want to throw some of that like Latino magic into it.
That's fascinating.
So, kind of, I think there's something there.
Do you know the title?
Actually, I do. The working title is Little Saints Everywhere.
Oh, very good.
So, I'm working on. And I'm working with Mike Funandetta, and okay, I won't go into it.
So, in your counseling, do you use writing? Do you have them write?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I go over like story structure, and it is insane once I say you can do this, the power of you can do this. And the power of, they always Google me. Every time they Google me, they look me up, they search me, because and I work with a lot of young parents, and then they see my books and they see some of the things I've done. So I go into their home and tell them, no, this is good stuff, and they just, the pride they feel to have, and I'm just, honestly, and I've got to stop doing this, I've got to stop apologizing for my success, because I really, and then that's a trauma response. That is a trauma response that I was taught. I am proud of the fact that I'm doing this, because, no man is an island, but the reality is I am at the moment. There just aren't a lot of writers like me, and there are not a lot of writers that are being supported, and I'm told, we'll be a little bit more humble. Well, how did that work out for Christopher Columbus? I've got to start, sorry, this is me therapizing myself.
We're here, this is a safe place.
Being unapologetically proud of creation. Being unapologetically proud of your work. And I think everybody in here, you're not gonna do well in this industry if you don't have some kind of, I hate even the term ego, but some kind of confidence. So, I love this little book. Well, it's gonna stay little. You gotta, and so whenever I work with my clients, I'm like, look what I've done. You can too. I came from this, and no, I'm not gonna say that, because I hate it when people did that at Estacado High School, where I used to teach. But, yeah, it's been amazing when they see that I can do it, and I look like them. And sometimes they don't really respect me at first, thinking that I am weak at first. And then I go in and we figure it out, and I have them crying in the first 10 minutes, and we figure out, you can't do this. And the power of just listening to people and saying, you know what, you have value. A lot of these people they haven't been told they have value, that they have worth. So me writing books is just the fun part. But valuing the human experience and valuing people, I think that's where the real work happens. And whenever I'm writing, I think I try to put that energy into my characters. And Kirkus Review, the largest reviewer in the world, who gave me a star, which was unreal also, they said the characters were the most amazing thing in it because they just felt so real. But yeah, I don't know, for me, you gotta have that love for humanity and love for people and tell them you can tell your story and your story has value and your story has worth. And that is kind of changing what we're doing in some of our little therapy fields. Sorry, I'm on a healing journey this year, so I'm thank you.
I've just been thinking this whole time. Holy smoke, I'm so glad I asked you for that. I'm so glad I asked you. It's just been amazing. It's just such a beautiful reminder of the gift that we have.
Exactly. Yeah, and the power of it. Just the power of it. You know, I love, I got a phone call a few months ago from the guy who runs the library systems in Australia, and they put this book in every public library in Australia. So the fact that they're reading about, say, Southland, Texas, and people in the world are discovering. I did a workshop with the 8th grade class in North Dakota. North Dakota are they're reading this book, not realizing it's about witchcraft and like LGBTQ themes and immigration. Like this is about immigration and like all the hot topics, everything that we should be burning according to the state of Texas. I said, let's put it in one book to save double time. So, and the attacks that are coming from politics right now for people who are like me, for people who look like me, the attacks. And I'm done yelling and screaming. I'm done. No one's listening. We're all just yelling and screaming at each other. The only thing that's going to save us is telling our stories and writing our stories.
I absolutely. That's it. That's where the power is.
Yeah. So, anything else? Well, thank you guys once again for having me.
We need to do our raffle. Oh, perfect. You want to go do our raffle? Sure. James, that was great.
Thank you.
I just wish I'd had you in some of my classes when I was teaching.
Oh, no, I was hungover all the time.
Okay, well, I was used to that too.
She was too.
Yeah, I was too. I enjoyed it, trust me. Our guests, thank you so much. All right, let's go eat lunch.
Don't forget queries. We're covering query letters next month, so if you have a query letter that you want to get critiqued, we'll send it to CapRockWritersAlliance@gmail.com, and we might review it in the